9 on the agenda is consideration of a conditional use permit revocation. We'll need some background on this one.
Yes, absolutely. So again, Jude Mattingly, Office of Planning Staff, 444 South 5th Street. And you have a previously approved conditional use permit that is before you for possible revocation. So the request, what I'll do is kind of go over it. So conditional use permits have both you have to register within 30 days of approval. And then you obviously have the other language that says that you have to maintain your active registration. And if it lapses for X amount of time, September or like May of 2019 to September of 2023, that was 6 months, and more modern CUPs, it says 30 days as well. The case before you was approved last January, so January of 2024, and the property owner never registered it as a short-term rental. What happened was we discovered that when they came in to attempt to renew the registration, I believe the property owner had a misconception that the approval of the CUP was also the first registration. So when they came back to try to renew the registration is when we found out that it had never actually been registered after approval. So, sorry, I know that was kind of a lot to expel all at once, but all right, so the request for you is to review this case and determine whether or not the conditional use permit should be revoked. Rachel, if you could do like the next slide. This is the requirement that was not met with the previous approval, which was under 23 CUP 0170. The property never registered, so they missed the 30-day initial registration window. Next slide, please. And just for the record, we did provide the property owner with notice via mail, but we also had a verbal confirmation with them of this hearing date and email exchanges as well.
Was that condition or requirement also discussed by the board with the applicant?
Back in January 2024, the notes from that meeting would indicate that it was mentioned.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So again, the conditional use permit was granted on January 8th of 2024. No registration application was ever received by the Office of Planning. As I mentioned, the lapse wasn't discovered until the property owner attempted to come in and renew what they had thought was a registration. And a note based on some feedback that I think we've gotten, and Joe could correct me if I'm incorrect. We did a search to see if like there's been any kind of reported nuisances or complaints around the property. We worked with the zoning enforcement team to do an LMPD search for the past year to see if anything. We haven't found anything. We didn't have any reported complaints filed through Metro 301 that would show up as a zoning enforcement case or anything of the sort. So if you go to the next slide, please. Your required action, again, is to review whether or not to revoke this conditional use permit. And what I have been told is that in cases where it's essentially a paperwork issue, in this case, the individual didn't register, you could consider not revoking the CUP, but having them backdate any missed registrations. So essentially, if you were to elect to not revoke the CUP, property owner would have to pay the missed registration in addition to the current one that they would need in order to operate as a short-term rental.
And I'm just going to jump in because we've had revocations prior to this where either they've missed the renewal or they've not registered at all in the first place. And we really focused more on why they didn't, was there some sort of, somebody was in the hospital, somebody kind of thing, more so than they were told it was 30 days and they just didn't do it. So this was.
So this is in reflection of those. We've had some discussions at staff, and that's why we haven't taken the next round of revocations before the board, is we're trying to look at that process. This one was initiated by the property owner. That's why it's before you. We didn't we did the noticing as required by state law, but we didn't initiate it. We didn't put it on the proactively on the docket. We were asked. The conversation we're having at staff is there's really two types of revocations. There's ones where they forget to file a necessary application, and that's the registration. In past cases, we've undone the null and void status and reinstated the conditional use when they tried, and some miscommunication happened.
Yeah, because we had one where they had showed they had sent the emails and.
Yeah, and in
Right.
those cases, those would be warranted to be reinstated. This is kind of a different thing where that's really their only offense was failing to file that paperwork. And is there another solution to make amends essentially?
Okay.
So what we've been trying to do is look at those other ones that are up for revocation and see if they've been bad operators in other ways, mismanaging the property, where the property's been subject to LMPD police runs, been subject to property maintenance violations, been subject to building code violations, where there's other reasons to not allow it to come back. So it's more than just failing to meet that paperwork requirement. And if it doesn't, what the conversations that we would like to have with the board is, could they make it right, almost like paying back taxes, where if you go back, we're not suggesting you just reinstate it and they come in and get a new registration tomorrow. If you do reinstate it, our recommendation to the board is they have to pay the fees associated with all the past registrations, which in this case, they would have been required to register on January 8th of last year. So that's clearly been over a year. So they would have to pay for that registration. And then they would pay for the registration for this year, and we would backdate it to January 8th of this year. So they wouldn't have gotten away with paying any application fees effectively, because I'm going to go under the assumption that they did do short-term rentals in the past year and they just weren't cited, which is fortunate for them because that would have put it into a different category than what we're discussing now, which means there was no complaints. That's kind of where we're at. So this is a new approach
It is, yes.
to these ones. And I know not all the board members were involved in those past revocations. We struggled with those ones because we felt in some cases where they just failed to meet the paperwork. I know some board members didn't necessarily want to revoke, but felt that they had to. So we're trying to find a middle ground for these cases. And that's where we're at with this one.
So if somebody hasn't paid their registration, but they are operating normally, don't they have to pay taxes, report their income and that sort of thing?
Yes. So, but you can probably take some comfort in that. You can ask the applicant owner what platforms they use, but if they used Airbnb and I believe any of the platforms owned by Expedia, they have remittal agreements. So the platforms are submitting the taxes associated with occupancy to Metro. So that would have been satisfied whether they were legally operating or not. They just give you the taxes associated with anybody that rents on their platforms.
So I'm not sure that this really falls under the umbrella of forgot to register, because they were informed by staff. It was discussed at the meeting. And still there was no action taken to register. So, but what I'm hearing is that this is a new approach, and in cases like that, and I would not say those are cases where the applicant necessarily failed to register. I don't know that that's the case all the time, and necessarily forgot to register. But what we're looking at now is whether, in lieu of revoking the CUP, the applicant would pay.
The board still have the right to revoke the CUP. They failed to meet a requirement of the code. What we're trying to give you is an option, which we felt some of the board members wanted when we had those previous revocations. We revoked over 50. most of revocations went unchallenged because they were just people that stopped doing short-term rentals. But out of those 10 to 15, some board members just felt that they just made a mistake and that making them go all the way back through the process, because that's effectively what happens. If you revoke it, it's not game over. You're just sending them back to starting over. And I guess they could have an issue if they now have a 600-foot separation problem, which they may not have had before. But you're sending them back through the process. And if you feel that it was, for lack of a better term, an honest mistake, I know that we say at these meetings, you need to register. We put it in the staff report, but it could be overwhelming to some people. This applicant's on the long-term registry. Maybe they thought that that counted. I don't know. You probably should ask some questions of them as to why, but we're just trying to present an option, but we're not saying that you have to do this. We just feel that it's justified. What we're not recommending is that you just say, we'll reinstate it and there's no penalties. We want to make sure that, you know, they would have done what anybody should have done, which is immediately apply and pay that fee and then pay this fee. And then it's just kind of making it right.
Okay. All right.
And I will say, I think like the presence, if there had been enforcement actions, staff's position would have been different on this. It's the fact that there is no, you know, that's why we did the background search with LMPD and everything to see if there's been any kind of nuisances or anything according to the neighborhood. So if there had been enforcement stuff, I believe the process would have been different for this.
But in most of the cases for the revocations we've considered in the past, there was not an enforcement action. Okay.
On most, another way of saying what you just said is if there was, I mean, the process would have been the same. They would have came before you, but we wouldn't be supporting anything other than revocation if they had a history of being a bad actor and having a party house or having too many occupants or having issues that were bothering the neighbors. We would be recommending revocation and not this alternative.
Okay, members.
We don't have any speaker cards for this.
No, we don't.
You're the property owner?
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. If it's Scott Panella, he submitted the speaker card after I printed them. Are you Scott Panella? We have one.
Thank you. Mr. Panella, good afternoon.
Answer some of your questions, maybe.
Okay, of course. Name and address, please.
Scott Panella, it's 10204 Stone School Road, 40059.
You swear the testimony you're about to give today is the truth.
Yes,
Please proceed.
thank you. So a couple things. One, this is absolutely an error on me. I was very confused with the process because I thought if I'm not mistaken, there was 2 checks when I submitted for the CUP, the original CUP. I think there was one for like 150 and another one for 500 roughly. And I had gotten confused in regards to what that 150 was, because I think that's how much the rental registration is as well. So when I got approved and I paid that's why I came back to renew. So that was on me for sure, because I was a little unclear. I also had you had staff turnover at that time too, because I don't remember the previous person who helped me out. And so there was a little bit of confusion on that end on me. And then in addition, then I got started actually on the rehab of the property. I've never used this as short term. My plan is to in the future, actually. So the initial purchase of it was for rehabbing the property first because it needed substantial rehab. And then I actually had a long-term tenant in there for about 6 months while they found work over at Churchill Downs. So that was a long-term situation. I still realize that I would have had to, obviously register it for the long-term rental period, end of story. But that's why there was a little confusion, also a little bit of a delay as well. My next door neighbor to the left of me is so ready to have people come and go. She's actually in favor of it because she has seen it as a lack of a better term, drug house for many years. And so she was actually in favor of this when we originally came in for the CUP. So it just was kind of a cluster, to be honest. I'm totally taking blame on if you guys choose to revoke. I understand. I will likely line right back up and come back in here and see you in however long that takes. I'm hoping that's not the case. That doesn't, because there's no other applications in play either right now either, and there's no other 600-foot rule that's I have another one that I actually have maintained on Bohannon for the last 3 years, and that's managed by somebody else who manages that for me, and so he does this for me.
The
And so
registrations. He handles
yes, and so that's where I got a little confused. So I only have 2. So
All right. Any questions for Mr. Panella? Don't believe there are any. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
And it might help to put the required action back up for the options.
To summarize these, because I really see 3 options. The first option is you revoke this, and it's over, and he can restart the process if he chooses. The second option is you can reinstate the conditional use permit and just direct them to come in for a registration immediately. Our recommendation would be, in this case, because he has no other issues that we were able to find in terms of things associated with an illegal short-term rental, which would be reinstate and, pay for the past application, and the new application would be backdated so that it would be the same as if he properly followed the process from the beginning.
Do we need to set a time frame on that, like pay any missed registration and apply for active registration within the next 30 days?
Well, 30 days would have been, I would say, within the next week.
Yeah, okay.
It would be my recommendation.
So that would be a condition, a change to a condition?
I think it could just, if we can make it part of the motion.
Would just be part of the motion.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Is anyone ready to proceed with the motion, or do we need additional discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm not ready to make a motion yet, but it may be soon, but I just wanted to, again, for benefits of the board and for other folks that are listening, that based on my experience with this board, which admittedly is fairly short compared to the rest of y'all, I believe there's only 2 kinds of neighbors that adjoin properties that are short-term rentals. Those that are aggravated by there being a short-term rental, and those that will become aggravated. So on the basis of that and the land development code, there's a profound awareness that best practices, as well as being a good neighbor, is that you go through the formal process of seeking a conditional use permit rather than just doing it without any permit, because there's a lot of that going on, and obtain that conditional use permit for a short-term rental, either owner-occupied or not owner-occupied, and that you abide by the requirements of the registration and all the other provisions that go along with that. So it's important that that gets stated and restated as part of the considerations when on a individual basis, those conditions have not been met, and we have before us the opportunity to either uphold and enforce a revocation, or in fact to do something that's more mitigating to the property owner. That being said, and we don't have a staff report in front of us.
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet. Well, that's from last year though, isn't it?
There's no
Oh,
staff report for
yeah,
the
that's-
revocations because it's an action of the
That's right.
board. We didn't prepare a staff report. What we provided were the minutes. And the main thing I think that you may want to take away from the minutes is at the time, nobody opposed the short-term rental, because that might have been a factor that we would have considered, is if there was opposition
Right.
to the short-term rental. But we don't provide a staff report because there's really no standards on which to review against. You have the standard that's in the ordinance that says that you have to do it within 30 days, and that's fairly straightforward. then you are just empowered by state law as the body to revoke a conditional use permit. So there's really nothing for staff to review against that would be in a report.
That's fine. I appreciate that. So on that basis, I was prepared to make a motion that follows option 3 that Mr. Haberman offered earlier. I don't know how to restate that. I didn't write the notes down, but it would be, in fact, to reinstate and to include as a condition of that reinstatement that the prior registration also is required, even though that's for a year that's now in the rearview mirror. Too bad. There has to be continuity there, and that the continuation, the reinstatement of it be based on that condition, as well as that the registration for the current year be obtained in the normal 30-day interval, if not
Right. And
sooner.
if it helps to wait, probably to phrase it, if you're leaning in that direction, would be a motion to reinstate the conditional use permit on condition. And then you can basically go through the last 2 lines where the applicant is going to pay any missed registration and apply for an active registration within 7 days of this board's decision.
That summarizes my motion very well. Thank you very much. And that is based on the excellent information and perspective provided today by staff, and also by the explanation for the lapse in registration provided by the applicant.
Is that a second?
That was your motion?
Yes, it is.
Second.
All right.
Bozos.
Been properly moved and seconded. Hmm.
That in
To-
lieu of revoking.
Yeah, in lieu of revoking the CUP, to have the applicant pay any missed registration and apply for an active registration within 7 days of this board's action.
Just to summarize what that means, and probably my attempt at more layman terms, is instead of paying $250 and moving on an application within the next 30 days, as would be a normal conditional use, he's going to have to pay $500 in application fees. And we're going to backdate his current registration to January 8th, so it's not valid for a full 12 months, which would have been what he would have done had he followed the process properly in the first place.
All
Right.
that too.
Okay, do we have an appropriate motion and second then? All right, roll call, please.
Bozos,
Yes.
Vida,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Bond.
Yes. Mr. Panella, your revocation.
I'll get it paid tomorrow.
Yes, okay.
We take checks.
And then we're going to need a motion to untable
Yes.
item number 2 on the agenda.
She here, or
All right, did we get the microphone issue addressed?
that's right.
We'll need to untable and then we'll figure it out.
All
Either
right.
it will be addressed and we can move forward, or it won't be addressed and probably your next action would be a motion to continue to the next meeting.
Is there a motion to untable? Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded to untable the discussion on 24 non-conform 0036. Roll call.
Yes.
Vida,
Yes.
Bozos,
Yes.
Bond.
Yes.
Amy Brooks, Office of Planning Staff, 444 South Fifth Street. This is 24 non-conform 0036. It is a request, a non-conforming use determination for 2 dwelling units in urban neighborhood, single-family zoning.
Yeah, and I think you did your presentation.
And I did.
broke
I was just
down-
going to
yeah.
kind of, we're
Yeah.
trying to establish non-conforming rights for a duplex. When there was an area wide in 2015, the density would have only allowed for 1 unit at that point. And so it went from being R6 to being urban neighborhood, which only it's single family, so 1 home per lot. So your required actions to approve, deny the non-conforming use determination for 2 dwelling units in the UN Urban Neighborhood District and Traditional Neighborhood Form District. And I believe the applicant is online. I believe she has called in.
We can see
Ma'am?
you.
Now you actually are muted. So if you could hit the unmute button.
But it looks like she is muted. Is that correct?
No, it looks like she's unmuted now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Still no sound.
I think it's a volume.
So if you want to try to call in again, we might be able to make that phone work. I saw your number before when you tried to call in. We can unmute that.
Looks like she's calling.
It seemed to be working. I mean, we still can't hear her. Okay.
Yeah, it takes a while to enter the sequence of numbers. There are quite a few numbers involved when you're calling in. Yes.
Yeah, we're getting pretty good at that. Oh.
Everyone hear me now?
But please mute the speaker on your computer because
Okay.
otherwise we get a terrible echo.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you for your help. It's been a while since I've used Webback.
All right, ma'am,
Um,
name and address, please.
My name's Tessa Plummer. My address is 104 Willoughby Lane, Cary, North Carolina, 27513.
Could you restate your address, please? I'm sorry.
Yes, 104 Willoughby Lane, Cary, North Carolina, 27513.
Could you raise your right
I've
hand?
re-
You swear the testimony you're about to give today is the truth.
yes.
All right. Please proceed.
So I'm a landlord. I have several properties in Portland. I've got 14 units. The majority of my business is focused on affordable housing. And I experienced an issue where I bought a duplex on Griffith Avenue and, long story short, found out through when I was attempting to rent via Section 8 that it was incorrectly zoned. So when I purchased this property, the 2622 Duncan Street, I proactively got with the Office of Planning and, was asking, is everything, good? Was this being listed as a duplex? Find out that it's not, go through the process. And so we're here today, but essentially the property, from everything that I've understood through the former owner, the workers who have done maintenance on the property, neighbors, it has historically been used as a duplex and is a duplex. And so I'm here basically asking for you to grant non-conforming rights so this property can be, represented properly as a duplex. And it has been rented as a duplex. It's currently rented to two families in our community. They are considered lower income. And so my thing would be I take good care of my properties, good care of my tenants. It would be a shame to have a vacancy, you know, in an area that really struggles with housing. And so I want to be in compliance with you all. And I have affidavits from neighbors who I know have worked on the property throughout the years. So I'm here asking for that.
So the neighbors, how far back are they able to go?
Okay, so they were formerly, so last year they moved into the Shelby Park area, but they were formerly living at 2304 Duncan Street. I know them because they do maintenance in that area, and they had actually done maintenance and work on this property. And so they go back to the 90s, 1996.
Okay.
But as I've had everything that I have garnered from those in the area has said that no, you know, that it's been a duplex. So, and then I spoke with the former owner who has spoken with that former owner, and to his knowledge, it's also been always used as a duplex. And there's, within the property, there is no, you know, I've seen some properties before where you can see that that it's been a single family and there was like an adjoining door or a staircase like inside that would join them together. This doesn't have any type of staircase leading up to the second floor. So they're from the inside. So the only way for the tenant for the second unit, the only way for them to get in their apartment is by using the staircase outside. And then the only way for the first floor is to come through their front door or their back door.
Okay. Is there any other information you want to share to support the non-conforming use?
So I have leases, I have utility statements. So there's two different meters on the property. Everything, there's, you know, two different water heater, you know, just various things that support that it is a duplex and has been a duplex. According to the code, like code enforcement, I've had both units inspected. They separate them out, and the community, everything that I've always understood it to be a duplex and that it was historically a duplex.
Your leases are dated. What are your leases dated? What years?
My current lease.
Not
so
the current lease.
Okay.
The leases that you want to use to support the non-conforming rights.
The leases that I am using are the ones that I've had access to, which are the ones. So when I purchased the property, it was, there had been a major flood, and so it was vacant at the time. I since have rented it, and those leases started in December and January of 2024, January of this year.
But you don't have leases going back historically.
I don't, unfortunately.
Years. Okay. All right. Members, any questions for Ms. Plummer? Don't believe so. If there's anything else that you'd like for us to consider, please advise.
You know, I think just considering the neighborhood and my experience there, houses do better when they are occupied. And, you know, I'm a good landlord. I have taken care of the property. There were needles kind of scattered around the property. People were squatting in it. When I purchased it, it had sat vacant for 2 years. And I completed the renovations. It was, like I said, it was abandoned after there was this major catastrophic leak. And so I've done all of those necessary repairs. I brought everything up to compliance. Both families that live there. There's a family on the first floor. They are participants in the Section 8 program that has passed, inspection. I care for it. I provide all of the maintenance for it. On the second floor, it is an elderly woman that is on a fixed income. And so, I care about this neighborhood, and I think it benefits us. I think it would be harmful to not grant this because it could potentially leave a home vacant that could otherwise be rented to an additional family. So thank you all for your consideration, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay, and of course, the action before the board is to determine whether this property contained 2 dwelling units going back to 1971 consistently through the present.
Mm-hmm. And,
All right.
And I guess just to clarify, the 3 affidavits that I have, they were present in the area from the mid-90s. So I know that doesn't go all the way back to the early 70s, but I think that it does show that this wasn't a recent development. So.
Okay. Okay. All right. And we appreciate your efforts to rehab that property.
Yeah, it
Improve the
was
dwelling.
amazing. It's much better than what it was. So.
Yes. Okay. All right. Members, anything for Ms. Plummer? Thank you, Ms. Plummer.
Thank you all.
Okay, I don't have any other speaker cards for this case, so I'll close the public hearing. We're in deliberations. The non-conforming use determination for 2 dwelling units at 2622 Duncan Street. And we've had an opportunity to consider the testimony and any documentation or corroboration from neighbors about whether or not there were 2 dwelling units on the property. So it sounds like there is information that goes back to the mid-90s, but it's very difficult to go back to 1971 and find documentation that would lead us to the decision that these ought to be non-conforming rights. But I'd like to hear from the board. Or a motion, correct, or a motion.
Madam Chair, before we get to a motion, so I think this is material to our considerations today, even though I think some of this involves issues that are certainly outside the realm of this body, but just for edification, whoever may be observing, some of the provisions or considerations that we have as BOZA relative to, for example, approving or denying short-term rental CUPs include a consideration of whether or not the action will add to or subtract from the inventory of affordable housing in Louisville. While I don't think any of those discussions are necessarily decisive, at least the intent, which is to make decisions and form public policy in a way that tries to increase the inventory of available housing rather than decrease it, is worthy of consideration today. So I take that into consideration. Second point of consideration is just because a property has been historically used in a non-conforming manner and no one has ever called attention to it or complained about it, I'm not even sure how this one came to our attention, doesn't necessarily mean that we would want to render a decision that endorses the idea that as long as we don't find out about it, it's okay. That would send the wrong signal, and I would not be okay with that. And then finally, a consideration would be the degree to which the operation of this property as a duplex going back historically, and maybe only on an episodic basis, we don't have before us tangible evidence, at least that I would consider tangible evidence, that it was in compliance with the zoning requirements at the time of 1971 and has been continuously used in that way all the way to 2025. There is still sufficient evidence that it has been used as a duplex, both units rented simultaneously, off and on for a period of time. And we have not heard anything, at least I've not heard anything that indicates that that use has been a problem for the neighborhood. So that's something to take that I take into consideration as well.
And I'll just add, on the non-conforming rights, basically it's letting you say your use predated the change in zoning. So you were operating within the guidelines prior to the zone change. So you get to keep operating in that manner. And that's why this 1971 date is so important. Now, I mean, sometimes it's a later date because there's a rezoning or there's some other thing, but you're really looking to 1971. And keep in mind that even if this board were to conclude that there isn't sufficient evidence showing that this use was in 1971 versus it started in 1983 or 1990 or some other date after 1971, they have the option of pursuing a rezoning to something that might allow. Now, whether they will get the rezoning's another story. You know, that's a discretionary, it's not a guarantee. You know, it sounds like it would be hard because R6, the lot's so small, but your real determination is staff has said, we can only get back to the 1990s. So we can't, it's not black and white. So we have to take it to you board. And you have more discretion, you have more shades of gray to play with and coming up with, but you need to kind of hang your hat on something going back to 19.
I'll just add the date. This one's a little bit confusing because it was rezoned since 1971. 1971, I call it the day without zoning. It's just a default where we didn't renew our zoning. So it gives us this nice clean year to go to in the old city. But they did pass the first test because UN clearly only allows, the single unit. And we went back to the time when it was created to UN. It's just we couldn't then get it back to 71. This structure was built in the 1800s, which was probably before there was zoning altogether, but we just don't have to go that far back. So I was a little bit involved in the research on this. So we just don't have evidence one way or another from that time back to 1971. I don't think we found anything conclusive that it wasn't a duplex. We don't really use the directories against anyone because that's people reporting who lives there. That's something we use for them. And the site visit that's mentioned in there as part of the Portland neighborhood plan was probably just somebody walking down the street and, they would have to see a telltale that there's 2 units in there. So it's really just trying to figure out what information's available in that time frame, and it is difficult.
And I will say there's another path forward, not just doing a change in zoning. So this is in UN. So there is a planned development option available as well. That it's not a full change in zoning that could allow them to establish a duplex if the board sees fit, if the board decides not to grant non-conforming rights.
I'm
So
not
there's
sure I
a-
understand that option. Amy, would you
You
clarify
can go
that?
ahead, Joe.
Well, I would only just listen to this option if you're not going to grant non-conforming rights. This is an option that they could otherwise use to come into compliance if they do not have, they either have non-conforming rights or they do not. This isn't really a decision that we make because we think it's good or not. It's a decision based on the evidence that we have to make it. But if they fail to convince the board to have non-conforming rights, what Amy's mentioning is an option that they can do short of a rezoning that would allow the 2 units.
So we need to make that decision irrespective of any
I
options
wouldn't,
about
that
future
shouldn't factor
approaches.
into your
Yeah.
thought process.
Okay.
I do have a technical question though, if I may, just because I'm not that familiar with all of the steps involved with enforcing zoning decisions or non-compliance. So if we were to deny the non-conforming use determination, how quickly would they have to come into conformance? And would that conformance involve evicting one or the other of the residents?
So that will be at the discretion of the Department of Codes and Regulations that handle the enforcement of zoning and other, violation types, building code and property maintenance. I can only tell you what I've seen them do in the past, which is they have shown if you have a reasonable path forward, anybody can almost get a new zoning to allow virtually anything. So that there's always a path forward, but some are more realistic and obtainable than others. This is a very realistic thing that they could get. They would probably give them time to go through that process and, see how that unfolds before they begin, issuing fines and requiring eviction and taking them to court and all that part of enforcement. But they could also begin fining immediately tomorrow. They typically don't require eviction. But you kind of get forced into it by incurring fines. But they don't go in there for zoning offenses and order people to leave. They'll go to court to get that. So that's probably not likely.
There's also not a current enforcement case on this site, correct? This was brought to us by the applicant, I believe. So there is not a current enforcement case on this site.
Yeah. Okay. So any other discussion that could lead us to a motion?
Excuse me, am I allowed to pipe in, or is my time
We've
Sorry,
closed the
is
public hearing.
closed.
closed?
Yes, it's closed. The public hearing is closed. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
No, I think I've heard enough, Madam Chair, if I may make a motion.
Yes, please.
I believe in the, with the informed discussion that we've been able to have and the guidance from staff, that I would move to approve the non-conforming use determination for the two dwelling units. Let's see. In the UN Single Family Zoning District and Traditional Neighborhood Form District, this is case number 24 non-conform 0036 pertaining to the duplex at 2622 Duncan Street in Louisville. Based on the information that we've heard from staff, testimony from the applicant, and the other applicable review that we've done today.
And in part, based on the historic structure of the building?
Based on the historical structure and use of the building.
There a second?
Second, board.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded to approve the non-conforming use determination for two dwelling units. Roll call, please.
Ford,
Yes.
Bozos,
Yes.
Bida,
Yes.
Bond.
No. All right, the non-conforming use has been approved. Thank you.